The Total War series reinvents itself as a more streamlined and accessible strategy game set in medieval Britain. Killing Floor, Incursion PSVR review, co-op survival horror. For the last 18 years the Total War series has maintained an impressively consistent quality as one of gaming's premier strategy series. But like any strategy game, they can be a hard sell to the uninitiated, even with their famously impressive battlefield visuals. That's no doubt why the last couple of games have been based on Warhammer rather than a historical setting, and why this return to the franchise's roots tries its level best to make things more accessible. Total War Saga is planned as a new sub-series that focuses on smaller-scale campaigns from a more limited stretch of time. In Thrones of Britannia you get to war over the whole of the British Isles, beginning in 878 AD and following invasions by Vikings that have left the various kingdoms with far too many kings and not enough reason not to go to war with each other. We're not sure that's necessarily any less intimidating to a new player than taking control of a whole country right from the start, but by streamlining the usual options and adding in new features originally created for the Warhammer games, a lot of the series' more complex elements are bypassed or simplified. But while this does, theoretically, make things easier for new players to get into the game, they also rob it of some of its depth. Regardless of the scale of the game, the structure is essentially the same as always, and really not that different from 2015's Total War: Attila. You control your kingdom from a turn-based map where you can train troops, build structures, and engage in diplomacy with other factions. Getting into a fight switches you to an entirely different real-time view of the battlefield, where you have to control your troops in what is essentially a real-time strategy game. You can choose to start the game as any of 10 different factions, including rulers from the various kingdoms of England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. It quickly becomes obvious why developer Creative Assembly chose this particular time period, and it's for the simple reason that everyone is always raring for a fight. It's not just because there was nothing else to do back in those days, but the high concentration of would-be rulers means you can barely move without upsetting one of them and starting a war. When controlling things on the strategy map, it's pretty clear where Thrones of Britannia's priorities lie. Your construction options for buildings are severely limited and armies can be raised in a single turn, although they take time to build up to full strength. That actually makes perfect sense in the new role-playing style tech research, where you unlock more advanced weapons the more you invest in its more basic forms, also feels more appropriate than worrying about civilization-style tech trees. Getting rid of trade agreements on agents seems a step too far though, as you realize that the game just isn't interested in anything that doesn't directly help with or encourage war. And yet at the same time, subtler options like forced marches and raising settlements have also been removed. All you get in compensation is a focus on the traits of leaders, who have stats that can be leveled up to provide skills like night vision or specialist soldiers, and followers who can help maintain public order and root out rebellions. Despite all the streamlining, the civilization-esque strategy is still compelling, and while the various factions may not seem very different at face value, they do borrow some ideas from Warhammer in terms of forcing would-be rulers to go out on what are essentially side quests to prove their legitimacy, or graded benefits from a primitive form of parliament or profits from the slave trade. In terms of the battles, there's further simplification from previous games, in large part because of the time period but also because there are no overpowered hero characters. There's less variety in unit types than most Total War games, and naval conflict is extremely basic, but to compensate, the formation and guard options from the older games have been brought back. Effective use of shields is more important than usual, which is interesting, but it often feels like all the clever tactics come in the first few minutes of battle and everything after that is just butcher work. The longest-running problem with Total War has always been its artificial intelligence, which, understandably, often struggles to put up a satisfying fight. It's less of a problem on the strategy map simply because it often feels like a giant free-for-all anyway. But you can still find the computer making schoolboy errors in battle, unwisely committing all its forces at once or losing its nerve and retreating for no obvious reason. Creating a more streamlined and accessible Total War is a perfectly good idea, but in the end Thrones of Britannia loses more than it gains by the change of scale. The real-time battles are still as entertaining as ever, but the strategic-level machinations suffer too much from oversimplification. It's still a good place for newcomers to the series to start, but once they get a taste for the series' pleasures, Warhammer and Rome 2 offer much more compelling sagas. In short, an understandable attempt to create a more accessible Total War experience, but it's been streamlined so much it offers only a small taste of the series' full potential. Pros: the real-time battles are as enjoyable as ever and some of the changes to tech research and leader progression are for the better. Good graphics and historical atmosphere. Cons: the neutered strategy element is less engaging than usual and the battles also lack variety in units and tactics. The usual bugs and AI problems. 4/7 formats. PC price £29.99. Publisher: Sega. Developer: Creative Assembly. Release date: the 3rd of May 2018. Age rating: 16. Email: gamecentral@metro.co.uk. Leave a comment below and follow us on Twitter.